Okay, everybody. So we've moved, just to do a very quick summary, so you have a sense of where we are, where we're going, and what we're going to do today. What I want to clarify today is this animal called the teleological suspension of the ethical. The teleological suspension of the ethical. Suspending the ethical teleologically. Actually, that's not what that means. The teleological suspension of the ethical. Well, that's what it is. Right. I put in an artist comment. I mentioned that earlier. Someone come through it. I was talking about that. Okay. In order for us to really grasp what's at stake here, we, meaning Mattia and I, have tried to set you into a framework so you have a certain set of tools at your call. The first tool is that you understand that you have a brain in your head, and that you more than understand it, that you are not afraid to use it. Which means that you have to deal with something at some level that is psychological. And I don't mean to push you into this notion of what is conscious, what is unconscious. I'm not talking about at this level. I mean, when you're at home by yourself, do you actually, when nobody's listening, think you're smart? And if you don't think you're smart, it's probably, at least in part, because somehow, in the scheme of things, you were told you weren't smart. And you believed them. And that might have been the only stupid part. Because in order to go forward, you need to at least have some kind of view that you're intelligent. And if that doesn't work, at least have the view that you're not any less intelligent than anybody else. So if you can't quite think that you're intelligent, think that you're not as stupid as the worst stupid person. Now that's not to say that there aren't levels of intelligence. That's not to say that there aren't, people that are considered geniuses and people that are considered this, that, and the other thing. It's simply to say that you need to first and foremost take as a given that you are intelligent, you yourself, for no other reason than that you are you and yourself, and you are smart. And you can think things, and you can make decisions, and those decisions are based on a variety of factors. And if you follow the Kantian, let's say, suggestion, the very first thing you need to understand is that you need to dare yourself to say, yeah, I'm going to ask questions, because something seems like it's not quite accurate. And as soon as you get to that level of not quite accurate, you know that you're in trouble. Because if you're not going to follow the status quo, there's a number of reasons for that. Either you're not in the status quo, so that you'll be then accused of not wanting to follow the status quo because you're not part of the status quo, or because you find the status quo boring and you want to do something else. The point is you need to know that you can break through something, break through what is set out as a rhythm or a habit or a custom or a tradition. Now, to question that brings in a lot of issues. And one of the usual issues is the question of God. And the reason it brings in the question of God is because at the end of the day, or at the middle of the argument, you need to make a clear sensibility of why something is happening, or in what way something is happening. And if you yourself can't take responsibility for that decision, then you are going to follow some form of dogma. Now, you're not going to be able to invent everything. You're not going to be able to sit there and go, I have to invent this, I have to invent that, I have to think of it. No. But what you need to kind of work through is you need to get to the point where you trust yourself. And I would bet there are very few people in this room, maybe one or two, that actually are there. And that most of you think, if you were really pushed, that you're actually cheating the system a little bit, or that you're a fraud, something like that. And that is very much what Kant is arguing, that is what the social sets up if you want to take those steps to start questioning. Now, it gets more complicated because obviously there are certain parts of knowledge that don't have answers. And if you ask questions like the why question, normally it'll just come back to God or faith or some Archimedean point that gives meaning to a movement of some kind. And so you're sort of trying to figure out why something happens, but you need to address it as a holistic situation. This is why we moved from the Kantian question of the Enlightenment to Wittgenstein's questions on certainty, asking how is something understood, on doubt, first of all, the question of how the Cartesian move around doubt, to the Wittgenstein move from Cartesian movement of doubt to the Wittgenstein remarks on how certainty is constructed. Do you have any questions on that? Because we're going to hang on to our hats and go for quite a ride. Everybody's okay with that? Good. Kind of okay. Good. All right. So, if you're not okay, it's okay. We can raise it in a moment, in case you realize, having listened to this, that you're actually not okay with it. Okay, so, if we just push this a little bit more, a little bit further, we move into the analytic and the question of how judgments are formed. And this is what Mattia was talking about again last week and what we were doing. So, if you think about how you figure out how your piece of work, let's just forget about, the big questions of life, how the big judgments are formed, how Oscar Pistorius got prison sentence for 5 years, or how those judgments are actually given, those kind of judgments. How do you actually pick the color red versus the color orange, or how do you make those judgments? They're not dissimilar in the wider fields of how certainties are formed. And somehow the question of experience comes into it. Well, I kind of like the color red, or I know that that'll kind of work and that one won't work, and so secretly in there somewhere is going to be this nagging problem of how you come to deal with experience. And there are two ways that one tends to understand experience. One is called the subjective, subjective. So like Mickey Mouse. subjective. Okay, subjective. Sorry, I just put it. Okay, you have the subjective, and you have the subjective tends to mean that it's something that occurs because it's dependent on things. It's dependent on the fact that something will happen to it. It's subjected. It can move. It's not always stable. So the notion of subjective has a kind of viscosity to it, has a kind of tactility to it, that the notion of the objective in this example does not have. Now, throughout this course, they're going to start shifting. They're going to start trading places. It's going to be like a shell game. Sometimes the objective is going to be here, and sometimes the subjective is going to be there. Then they're going to switch places, and they're going to be the same place, and they're not going to exist at all. So keep your eye on the shell game. It's going to start going like this. Okay, so the word experience teaches you, if it teaches you anything at all, that the word objective seems to be more stable than the word subjective. And the word objective is kind of like the fact that I hit this table is not my view that I've hit the table. I hit the table. There's a certainty about that. And you would say that's objective. That's an objective fact. But if I said, well, you were all dreaming. You were all crazy dreaming. You never hit the table. And let's say you got confused. You thought, maybe it was a crazy dream. Maybe she never hit the table, and we don't have any recordings, and nobody remembers when I hit the table. Did I hit the table? No. That's right. Maybe. Now, so we know that the objective tends to mean that something you can feel, you can see it, it has a hardness to it. You could say it has an immovable ground. And in that sense, that I'm doing this is true. So objective and the word true, or objective and the word truth, are connected. Then I'll break as I did on my thinking. I'll be in the same case you are in. Subjective is another way of looking at truth. I can say to you that identity is subjective. That if we follow this kind of version of the objective, like a different way of putting it is the seed of the acorn. So we have that acorn, it unfolds until it finally becomes the oak tree. Then the oak tree comes back around and gives meaning to the seed progress. So we know that, and what's that called? Telos. Good. So we know that the telos means that the goal is in fact the start, and it secretly guides the mission. But if you're not happy about turning into an oak tree, if you are this little acorn seed wandering around, and you want to instead be, I don't know, a ball gown, you don't want to be an oak tree, you want to be a lovely dress, then... Yes, exactly. Let's say you just want to be a gown. You've always wanted to be a gown, and people say, no, you must be an oak tree because, parents before you were oak trees, your brother and your sisters are oak trees, you're going to be an oak tree, no, I want to be a gown. Okay, in postmodernism, you can become that gown, But it's not just because there's a magic wand that goes, oh yes, you're going to have sparks become a gown now. Something happens that allows the subjectivity to have more grit, to have more gravitas, to have more weight. So there's something, we're going to discuss this something now, that means that it's not just my wish that I don't want to be an oak tree, that instead I want to be a ballroom gown, but the I want, the notion of I want. I don't want, I want. That you know that you might want something. This is the first rule of having a brain in your head. The I want. That you say I want. Of course, Freud is going to go into the question of I want being nipple. I want the nipple. That's the first thing you want. I want taste. I want pleasure. That's the first knowledge of I in the I want, as opposed to want. The first knowledge of I in the I want for Freud is the taste of the tongue on the nipple. It's pleasure. Sadly, you all are still doing that. You're smoking a cigarette. Okay, so, it's always having this taste. Your mouth always breath. Okay, so this notion begins to build the I of the I want, not the want of the I want. The I of the I want. I want. I know I have a brain in my head. I want freedom. I want to escape what I'm doing. I'm just curious. I just want to go in that direction because it's green. I just want. I want to go in that direction. So to go in the direction of the I want means that you're having some kind of relationship with subjectivity. Now, this is a slippery slope. Sometimes I said the subject is here and the object is here. Sometimes the subject is here and the object is here. Sometimes they're like on either side. So, in tonight's lecture, what I would like to alert you to is the way in which Kierkegaard begins to develop the subjective I. And he develops the subjective I in I want, because he's going to take something very peculiar, which for a lot of people in this room is considered just creepy, or in fact wrong. He's going to rely on this thing that he calls faith. Now, Kierkegaard was religious, and depending on how you want to interpret Kierkegaard, you could interpret him in a religious manner. I'm trying to secularize him, maybe interpret him in a non-religious manner, because I think his work is very important for art. And so, and I'm not the only one that thinks of, I mean, I'm bringing forward a certain kind of argument, certain reading of Kierkegaard. So he has this book called Fear and Trembling. He's got a number of books called Kierkegaard. What's really great is I met somebody, in fact, who speaks Finnish here? You speak Finnish, right? Or Norwegian, yeah, but how do you say Kierkegaard? Kierkegaard. Yeah, Kierkegaard. Can't do it, sorry. I'm massacring this. Anyway, in his Fear and Trembling, he wants to raise a very odd point. And he's going to raise it around the myth or the story of Abraham and the possibility of him killing his son, Isaac. Everybody has probably read this book, and if they haven't, I hope you at least know the story, where Abraham is married to Sarah, and they want a child, and they can't have this child, and they eventually, and then I think Ishmael is the son of the woman who's, in fact, I think a slave. It's kind of a complicated family relationship. And Ishmael becomes the founder of Muslim religion, and Isaac is like the founder of or one of the founders, and one of the founders of the Jewish religion, and complications arise, blah, blah, blah. And Abraham is told by an angel or by God or by somebody that God is requiring him to kill his son. And it says to kill your only son, which really was a bit of a fudge because he actually had another son, but all right. That son didn't, I guess, count because they weren't married. Anyway, the complications and the complications. So he's asked to show his faith in God by taking his only son and killing him. And Abraham is told by God, oh, by the way, you can't tell anybody that I told you to do this. You've got to just prove to me that you really believe in me. And if you really believe in me, you will take your only son. You will not tell your wife, who is like going to flip out. You're certainly not going to tell the child, who will certainly have a view on the matter, I would think. And you are going to go off, and then you're going to murder him. And Abraham agrees to do this. So the first question that Kierkegaard asks is, was Abraham insane? Was he hearing voices? I mean, it is kind of, if anybody in this room had a secret like that and took their only child off to the desert to kill them and said that the reason I'm doing it is I've heard the voice of God, probably they would be arrested, I would think. Would you believe them? Would you believe yourself? If you heard some voice in your head telling you, go find your child's blood, take it to this mountain, kill it. So Kierkegaard thinks this is kind of an interesting problem, because it is a little bit crazy. So the first question he asks is this man crazy? How come this is like an important myth? Why are people following this myth? It seems a little bit crazy. So he lays out a couple of things. This is problem out of one. Actually, problem out of one is the fact he has a secret. We're going to get into next term. And he basically is going to develop this notion of what we're going to call, for the purposes of today, attunement. What it is to be attuned to something. ATTUNE. A-T-T-U-N-E-M-E-N-T, A-T-T-U-N-E-M-E-N-T, attunement. He's going to say that in order for you first to hear the voice, in this case of God, you have to be attuned. It's like, is anybody a musician? We've got Simon here. You do musicians. Yeah. You're a musician. Other musicians, yeah. So do you know tuning fork? You know, so ding, you listen to it, like a little mosquito. I got bit. Something is on my thumb. Anyway, this, I heard like, where is it? I wasn't sleeping. This artist can use it. Anyway, I'm not really somebody who likes the rural environment as much as I like. I like the scenery. But honestly, mosquitoes. There's a parenthesis. They had a very interesting art project that was 1 mile away in the dark. We could walk. And of course, because we were in an artist colony that had no GPS, you couldn't get online, nothing like that. Nobody's phone operated, so we couldn't actually find the place. So you had all these people kind of like getting all these crunching and falling off the road, and nobody had their phones weren't working and stuff like this. It was kind of funny. Anyway, I just thought I'd tell you that. So I was trying to be attuned to the countryside. You just sort of, it's so beautiful to be there, one with nature. So this notion of attunement, when you become linked to your experience through this kind of like, through the breath, through the body, and you can hear very clear, you can hear what you see. Or maybe a different way of putting it is you can see what you hear. Right? So you can, this could be a tuning fork, it could be a mosquito, but you're hearing, and you're attuned to something very precisely, and you follow it. First thing that Kierkegaard is going to develop is this notion of how you learn how to listen, how to hear. And the hearing is going to form your gut judgment, your gut reason, not your logic reason, your reason that's I'm just following my gut instinct. It's coming from this, it's coming from your tuning. You're tuning in, you're zooming in, you're telescoping in. And he's making the argument, he's going to set up the argument, that there's one thing in particular that allows you to get attuned faster than other things. You know what it is? Hinted in the title? No. The next word? Tremble. Okay, good. So there's something about a tremble, that when the tremble happens, you've hit the attunement. And most of you as artists will have felt this. Whenever that kind of like happens, that little mosquito sound, you're getting close to matching your thinking, yeah, that makes sense, or that is right. Kind of thing. You're tuning, you're like your ears, like your tuning fork. Now, what gets you to hear that can be fear, can be curiosity, but whatever it is, it's this kind of thing that you're following this thing, and it's going to create the tremble. And that's what I want to spend some time on now, thinking about with you. The voice and how it creates this tremble. Now the tremble, is that tremble objective or subjective? Both or neither? Don't answer that yet. Put it in your head. Ask yourself that question. Don't worry about why we're asking the question. That'll come later. Ask yourself the question. Is it subjective, objective, both, neither? Kind of thing. So and when you're hearing that thing, one could make the argument, certainly Kierkegaard makes the argument, that you're in the moment. You're in the moment. And not only are you in the moment, you are the moment. So it's a little bit of a jump. You're not just in the moment, you are the moment. Now, I don't know how many people have done the little test on learning how to read that did I mention this, where you have to go for 1 minute? Has it working? Is it working? How many minutes have you got to? 22. That's very good. You're at 19. Yeah, that's good.
We got taught that you could concentrate on break. So I was very confident that I'd be able to concentrate 20 minutes. So I just set a timer and started reading and then check the timer.
And you went 22?
I went 19.
Went 19.
22. So it's not like what I was trained to do before. Now it's really difficult to get up.
Yeah.
Because I do literally go back 20 minutes. Right. 20 minutes and then go back and then completely go over it.
It's difficult to get in the moment. But when you're in the, how many people can go, okay, 20 minutes is even extreme. But how many people can you do at least 2 minutes in the moment? Wow. Okay, like 4 of you. Great. Okay, how far can you go? How far do you go in the moment?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never really timed it, I don't think.
Okay, time to time it. Not at this very minute, but check yourself. Check to see. So here's what you do. Like I'm saying, you read or something, and when your mind starts to wander, you look at what time it is. And usually, if you haven't trained yourself before, you usually don't go more than 15 seconds, 20 seconds, something like that. Try and make it to a minute, then double it. Then double that, and then double that, and then double that, until you can go, eventually you want to go to 4 hours, where you're in the moment. So really what that's doing is, if we just sat and didn't let your mind wander at all, probably just a few seconds before your mind would wander, because you're not trained. Yeah, 2 or 3 seconds. Yeah, no, seriously. For those of you that can meditate,
it's ridiculous.
Anybody can go longer? Okay, 20 minutes doesn't count. Anybody try longer? How long can you go?
Probably about half an hour. Depends.
Without absolutely being in the moment. Okay.
I can go if I put some what I regard as relaxing music on as a kind of sensory deprivation of block.
Yeah, okay.
That then facilitates me concentrating, and I can put something on there. I can go on there for several hours. I've trained myself to do that. But if I don't put the music on, then it wanders according to whatever might distract my attention.
Yeah, right.
So
far everybody needs. Do you put any music on, Samantha, when you do it?
No, because then I get distracted and I have to be in silence.
So you have all silence. That's you have silence.
Listening to the music.
Anybody? John, what do you do? How long do you go?
It depends on what I'm doing in the moment.
Let's say you're doing your work.
That works.
That's right.
I'm about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah. When you're like.
When I'm just like that, yeah.
You're just like that. Anybody? That's usually about the norm. About 3 to 5 minutes.
This one of reading.
Yeah, obviously I'm trying to get you to do the reading side of it, but but for the time being, because you're still babies, so there's love. It's not just the reading, so your work or whatever counts to keep you focused.
In practice, I can do it hours, I don't know if that's
Just lost it.
Right, yeah.
And was there anything that, because I thought you were listening to headphones.
I have to music down, but it's about rhythm, but there's an internal thing. So like I recognise all this tremble stuff.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think the music idea, I'm thinking about having, being a musician, if you don't stay in the moment, if you're playing something, it could be disastrous.
Yeah.
Because if you went and thought something else, you'd be wandering. The orchestra would be all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think from that point, from a musical training, I think you can concentrate for a long time.
Well, that's why for children who are learning how to play piano and so on, it's a tough one, because they have to stay in the moment. Because they're not wanting to stay in the moment. We all have children right now, so you're sort of in that moment. Anyway, picture this in your mind. Picture instead of listening to, I don't know, what type of music do you like to listen to? What type of music?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, anything with a B, like left field.
Okay, so let's say you're listening to left field. Okay, well instead, you're listening to the voice of God. I'm serious. Yeah, whatever you understand by this thing called the voice of God, you're listening to this voice, and you're in the moment. And when you're in the moment, how long is that moment? This is not just a Zen question. How long can you be in that moment? And by which I don't mean hypnotized. I don't mean you're like sort of like walking now like sort of the undead, doing your work. You are very conscious. You are doing your work, but you're in the moment. That's a very specific way of thinking. Now, in order to do that for your artwork, or for that which you love, let's put it something like that, bit of a jump, you have to be willing to let go. And now, you could think of this in a Buddhist sense. I'm not meaning this in a Buddhist meditative sense. But you have to subordinate yourself to the voice. Now that voice could be your inner voice. That voice could be the voice of God. That voice could be left field. But you have to become subservient to that voice. A different way of putting this for artists is that you have to understand that you must give up everything for your art. If you don't, it's not going to work. You must become subservient to art. You must give yourself over. But it's a funny form of giving yourself over, because it's not like you have to, like I said, it's not like you're becoming the undead, or it's not like you're becoming dogmatic. It's not like a lot. In fact, not only is it not a loss of self, it's a found of self. And in order to find that form of the self, it requires, in order for you to be aware of this, you need to acknowledge the tremble. Because that's when you feel it. That's when you know you've let go and you're on a path. And it's not a path of complete, wow, where am I going? This looks interesting. It's not a drug path like that. It's a concentrated path that you must become subservient to. And if you don't, then it's not going to work. Now that doesn't mean that you're not a master. It just means that you're an odd form of a master. You're a servant form of a master, or something like that. Okay. Let's try it again. In order for you to actually be as full an artist, I'm using it this way, as you can possibly be, you need to subjugate yourself. There you go, that's the word I'm looking for. You need to be subjected to art. you need to suspend something. Now, the something that you're suspending is not either your common sense or your rational will. It's something else. And then it's something where you are then in charge of how the movement goes. You are responsible for your movement, but it's a movement that's happening once you have suspended this sort of armor that you wear. You have to, and in order to suspend that, it can only happen by hearing the voice. Now, again, I'm not saying that you're schizophrenic and you're hearing voices. I don't mean it like that. I mean that there's something inside you that just says, go do this.
You see a calling.
What's that? It's a calling.
And you just...
Yes, but how do you know that your calling is not nuts? How do you know that if the calling is telling you, come my child, go kill your son? You know, how do you know?
Ethics.
Yes. Yes. Hello. Hello, Johannes. Johannes Silencio.
Why?
Well, Johannes Silencio, do you know who Johannes Silencio is?
Sweden.
It's Kierkegaard, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, Kierkegaard wrote under that name, and it's very important that you recognize it. By the way, as you can tell, I probably use that name. I've used Johnny, Silent Johnny, and it was so much fun changing names. I mean, really, honestly, I've written so many different names. It's fabulous. Johannes Silencio is always a fun one to write about, because that one is where you are engaging in the silence, you're allowed, ALOUD, not permitted. You're hearing the silence. So Johannes Silencio is saying that what is the sort of teleological goal that allows you to say, I'm hearing this voice and it's correct, there's an ethics that are going on here. How apropos is that to have been having an ethics discussion earlier today? Is ethics. So how does that ethics come into your, do you feel the trouble when you do your work?
Yeah, like I get worried if I don't feel the tremble, then I try to change.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel I'm doing good if I'm worried to doing wrong. If I'm not worried, then I know I'm wrong for sure.
Right, yeah. So it just seems too pat. It seems too complete.
Yeah, it just seems safe.
Yeah,
in order to be,
yeah.
like, in order for your work to be honest and alive, you need to be on the possibility of pulling one edge, one side or the other.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just not doing anything meaningful.
Yes, okay. Does anybody else have that feeling? Do they have the tremble type thing? Does anybody not have the tremble?
Well, you sound like it shakes, you know. I mean, it's a metaphor, isn't it? Really?
Yes.
I mean, you don't actually have to do that.
Yeah. That's right. Yes.
You get that sort of feeling where you are onto the right thing.
Yeah. It's like the aha moment.
Yes.
Now, if Abraham didn't go aha, he didn't go aha, yes, I knew I had to do something, kill my son, yes, that was it. You know, and not tell anybody. So the different, it's still not quite as conscious as the aha. That's why it's referred to as a tremble, not because you're going around like with the, you know, DDTs or something like but that you, yeah.
Maybe the first.
Shall we go to the book? Is that what
the first chapter?
You want us to direct
how
us
does
to the book?
attunement?
Okay, let's go.
It's
What
very
page?
interesting for the way you feel.
What page?
My edition.
Are you using the edition that was on the?
No, I'll go. There's a preface and then attunement.
Okay, hold on.
So
So on the thing, let's just
Page 8 on this one. It's a 6 pages long. Kierkegaard goes as the problem, sentence by sentence, repeating with minor variations the same story, the situation of Abraham. And it's really creating a rhythm or a beat, but it's not a beat, a repetitive one. It's just trying to find a balance or some dimensions or some rules that then will all stay together.
Yes.
That to me is a very, very close image to what attempting to make something as an artist is, because one tries and it's not working, one tries and not working. There are so many attempts around something that is intriguing, and at a certain point, unlike Alberto, I have got the opposite feeling. There are no other options. One holds, then one with that. And everything else simply no longer there.
I mean,
So what I found interesting here was that the practice of becoming as practicing is coming, the falling in tune with.
it's slightly annoying about this particular edition that's on the Dropbox is that it doesn't say attunement on it. It's really quite shocking. It's a bad translation. So the prelude.
There's a preface and then the second chapter called Attunement in this edition. I don't know what it is.
I know, but I'm just trying to say, and in the, so if we have preface, it's page 2, then we have prelude.
Yeah, that should be the prelude, yeah.
It's a prelude, right? So in your Dropbox, where it says prelude, it should actually, it's a very bad translation, it should say attunement on it.
In this as well, it says on here, certain pages from me, but then it...
Yes, I can see they're not the same ones, are they now?
Yeah, it says page number 96 to whatever, but this is...
Okay, that's irritating. I'm very sorry about that. Wow. Okay. The edition that I was looking at. Do you?
Yeah. Sorry, I've got the page number of the Dropbox edition, if you want that.
Yeah. What are they?
So instead of 44 to 48, it is 8 to... Page 8 to page 11. So instead of page 83 to 95, it's page 39 to 48. And instead of page 96 to whatever the other one was, it's page 49 to
92 to 58.
Yes.
Anyway, and also where it says prelude, add the word attunement. But in fact, who has the other? Do you have the edition that says the word attunement?
Yes.
What edition is that one? That's the Penguin, isn't it, or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the page
The
numbers in
Penguin,
there
yeah.
correspond to that.
Yeah. So here, can I just borrow this? So the cover of the Penguin is also quite good, because poor little Isaac is going to be murdered. That's the picture, one of yes, this is. Oh, I'm so sorry about this. Please try and get a hold of the Penguin edition because it's the better translation, and in fact it has the correct words in it, like attunement, for example. Okay, so Mattia, can you read out loud? That's so funny because we were going to go to this. Can you share with people who can't see the printing out? Can you read out loud the?
Achievement first.
Yes, please.
There was once a man. He had learned as a child that beautiful tale of how God tried Abraham, how he withstood the test, kept his faith, and for the second time received a son against all every expectation. When he became older, he read the same story with ever greater admiration. For life had divided what had been united in the child's pious simplicity. The older he became, the more often his thought turns to that tale. His enthusiasm became stronger and stronger, and yet less and less could he understand it. Finally, he put everything else out of his mind. His soul had but one wish, actually to see Abraham, and one longed to have been witness to those events. It was not the beautiful regions of the east, nor the earthly splendor of the promised land he longed to see, nor the God-fearing couple whose old age God had blessed, not the venerable figure of the patriarchs quickening in years, not the youthful vigor God gave to Isaac. He would have been the same if it had taken place in the barren heath. What he yearned for was to accompany them on the 3-day journey, when Abraham rode with grief before him and Isaac by his side. He wanted to be there at the same moment that Abraham raised his eyes and saw in the distance the Mount of Moriah. The moment he left the ashes behind and went up the mountain along with Isaac. For what occupied him was not the finely wrought fabric of imagination, but the shudder of thought. This man was no thinker. He felt no need to go further than faith. To be remembered as its father seemed to him to be surely the greatest glory of all, and to have it a lot to be envied even if no one else knew. This man was no learned exegete. He knew no Hebrew. Had he known Hebrew, then perhaps it might have been easy for him to understand the story of Abraham.
And how come you're reading that? What is it that you wanted to connect?
Well, then he repeats these diction a number of times, and it's just slight variations. And after a while reading it, it really sounds like something that you use often, the expression beat being said. It really gave the impression to me that the text works as in a repetition, not a sterile, flat repetition when the same thing happens over and over again, but a repetition that is sort of banging his head against something.
Yeah.
So that at a certain point, this question, how something can be of this magnitude, which has got no comparison, can make sense, will become evident. And there is a hint in the last sentence that then becomes more clear in the book, when it says the man was not a learned exegete, he knew no Hebrew. And had he known Hebrew, perhaps it might have been easy for him to understand the story of Abraham.
He did not know Hebrew, you said.
Yes,
yeah, right.
because then Kierkegaard goes on to say that what Abraham does is not simply a secret, it's beyond what can be said. And therefore is completely is subjective in this sense also, that it is not what can be shared, because it makes a distinction between the ethics that is universal and the other thing, which is
Absolute.
it's beyond, it's not even absolute, it's beyond the universality of what can be shared.
Yeah, so
Sorry, beyond the language.
I think that what we should concentrate on that thing, I'm really apologetic about the fact that this is the wrong translation, because it really does put things in the wrong direction. However, one of the things that you should focus on here is that the tremble and the notion of the shudder of thought is the same thing. So it might be easier for you to understand what a tremble is, so that it's not like, as Nick so rightly pointed out, it's not like you're sitting around going to, sort of a trembling state. It's that something that ought to be, that isn't quite conscious, it's not unconscious, makes you have a physical reaction to it. And it's produced in this relationship of attunement. And the attunement, as Matthias so eloquently pointing out here, is the way in which the story starts being told again and again and again. I mean, what I was thinking of doing is, if we took like a 5-minute break, and then we literally go through the story, so you begin to see how the shudder of thought is incorporated in your own way, and that, in fact, each of you are required, as artists, to kill the sun. That's what he's talking about here. And will you do it? will you do it for your art?
Absolute belief going to the very end.
It's not, but it's a very specific kind of belief, because it's not dogma. And that's key here. It's the same kind of problem that Descartes, or is a similar kind of problem that Descartes raises with the question of doubt. The doubt that, the Cartesian doubt is not about not believing. The Cartesian doubt is that nothing can go further back. There's nothing before doubt, or past doubt rather. There's nothing that goes beyond doubt. You can doubt everything, but you can't doubt doubt. Doubt becomes the ground, and it's a fertile ground. It's a ground that can't close. It's a ground that's completely got energies to it. That's doubt names of positivity. Doubt names something that can't close. Likewise, this murder, this following of something that you have to go do, hoping that somebody will intervene so you don't actually have to go through the whole thing, is a requirement for you to become an artist. This is what Kierkegaard is getting at here. It's a very particular kind, or forget about the word artist, scholar. It's a very specific kind of knowledge, this knowledge that you're being asked to inhabit. And once you take up the gauntlet, once you pick up that gauntlet to go on that path of knowledge, you are guided by the shudder of the thought. It's your only friend. And it's not that you're being required to believe it. It's not belief in that sense. It's faith, which is a different form of belief. Yes.
It's like a surrender.
It's a surrender. Yes.
I don't even know where this comes from, but years ago I trained with a nurse who could learn this stuff. And there were some exercises I had to do, but the basic was all about surrender and acceptance. And so you were left with no way. So what you have to repeat is, I am death, I am coming, are you ready? I am death, are you coming, are you ready? So you just, everybody around, well no, when we were training, we did this with our group. So the group did that for each person. Wow. And so you got some people who go, oh no, I still have to do this, or no, I still have to do this, I want. And you get to this bit, so the repetition is still, and then you reach a point at which you go, yeah, and you embrace that. And almost by doing that, you surrender something.
You give yourself over to it, yeah.
And you didn't know that you were holding, and actually then by doing that, you release into to something that you can then follow, because it's almost like you have to abandon other beliefs, other things that you felt were important to reach something else.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and so it's almost that surrender.
It is, but it's not.
But it's not a negative.
Peculiar kind of, yeah. It's a peculiar kind of surrender by saying, right, because you're not actually going into the undead form, or you're not actually just going into, oh well, here's everything, or finally I will now murder everybody. It's something else, and you need to understand that, of course, the son that you're actually beginning to murder is yourself. You know, that's the key here. But anyway, Nick, maybe I jumped too fast there. We'll get there.
I was just going to say, some things you're entitled to surrender, your sort of ego, your way of thinking, and all those sorts of things, which I guess is what we're really talking about. But not the life of the child. That's no go.
And that's what's being asked.
Yeah. So no, I wouldn't. But when you say, well, actually, it's not. This is not a parable. But if it is a parable, or if there is something metaphorical about it, I can go along with it. There's people out in the desert in Iraq and Syria at the moment beheading people, aren't they, because they've made these sorts of decisions.
Yes.
So it's dangerous stuff.
It's dangerous stuff.
And I wouldn't go that far for my art. I might do it to myself, not to anybody else.
But it's French mathematics, basically, isn't it? Why you believe something so strongly that nothing is comparable, and goes beyond ethics, because like Nick said, you know, it's even, you know, it's not what you do to yourself, it's, you know, to your son even, you know, like sort of.
Yeah, that's right. That's the point. I mean, it's not just that you're saying, oh, well, I'm going to give up me, but in order to prove myself, I give away my son. I just won't give him away. I kill him.
It's sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's not self-sacrifice, it's like, you know,
Yeah, what were you going to say? Oh, John?
No, I'm trying to work out, is there's something different between when you're compelled to do something than when you surrender?
Yes, there's something in that that's very...
So there's something about when you are compelled, you don't really ask those questions because they don't come into the frame. But then when you surrender, for me it feels like you're aware of it more so.
Yes. Can you push that further?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay. Cynthia?
Yeah.
It's a bit long to explain. I don't know if I check the
Try it, and then we'll go to the quick break.
You know the banal expression, artists think with their hands, or stereotype of this sort, which I always found stupid, unbearable, superficial. But if we take that as a starting point, then we compare it with the chapter titled The Logical Substantial of the Episode, where Kierkegaard speaks of the tragic hero.
The tragic hero.
Yes.
Which
is not the figure of Abraham. Then there is a way into this. Now, I believe that Kierkegaard cheats a bit about the tragic hero, because it's not that, but he presents a tragic figure, King Agamemnon, that to save and win the war of the Greeks over the Trojans has to sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia. And he has to do it. The whole country is aware of it. For the whole country, he's a hero because he's going to do it. He's allowed to suffer in public. Tragedies and literature has been written about it. It's all on this side, but because it is an economy. He has got to pay with the life of the daughter for the sake of the country. So there is a distance. Kierkegaard says instead that Abraham does not fit in this game. There is no economy in it. The proof that God requires of Abraham is completely meaningless. It's absurd. There are terms of return. So that distance that was in the sacrifice of Agamemnon and Iphigenia, the economy of it, really paying with the life of the daughter for the victory in war, is not what Abraham does. So this is why I bring it back to...
That's the importance of the secret.
Exactly, but also thinking with your hands, of being one, not having any more the distance where I am thinking what I am doing. I am considering is this working or right, the purpose. At a certain point, that choice, aesthetic choice in the making of the work, is it. The distance that was there before in all the other attempts has vanished.
Now, I want you to repeat that again, because I think that people have just kind of, sort of, maybe in a little bit heard you. Just try it one more time. No, just from the Agamemnon. So you have two different stories. One is Agamemnon having to kill the daughter, and the other is Abraham having to kill the son. So what's the difference?
Well, the Agamemnon tragedy, the Agamemnon episode is the one of the tragic hero, which returns in Greek tragedy, Roman tragedy, in Shakespeare, also says Kierkegaard, where there is an economy at stake.
So, you see, you're sacrificing something for
greater
good.
Yeah,
Greater
for a
good.
greater good.
Yeah, this is also part of the 665. Remember when we did this when we first started?
Abraham has no greater good.
He has no 665, or no lesser of evils, no greater good or lesser of evils. Okay, go on.
So in an economy there is a distance, that permits the translation.
So when you say economy, that's the next word that people have to get focused on.
Well, literally, economy, this much is worth that much.
Yeah.
And in between, there is an equal sign that holds them together.
Like if I do this, and this will follow.
Permits the translation. And instead, Agamemnon is trading something for something else. The life of his daughter fought a victory of his country at war. And he is pressured by the country to do so, but he's also allowed to make it public. And there is a funny passage where Kierkegaard puts in Agamemnon's mind that, oh, could I be the lesser man that could weep, but shy away from doing this? And instead, I am the king, I have to do it with a staunch face and get through all this. So it's still on this side of the problem that Kierkegaard is facing. Abraham, instead, is not trading anything.
Wait, did you have a question on that?
Well, I was going to say that both Abraham and Kierkegaard believe they have some sort of absolute they're dealing with, don't they?
Absolute what?
An absolute God.
No.
Isn't this what sort of tips the economy? The fact that they're dealing with an absolute God as opposed to...
No, what tips the economy, as it were, is that one is doing it for a known solution, and the other one is doing it for no reason, except for the fact that it is expected of them.
That's Abraham.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the reason he's prepared to do that is because he thinks he's being tested by God.
Yes.
If you take that out of the equation and start talking about art, it tends to sort of...
Don't do that yet. Don't do that yet. Because we just have to finish, if we could just finish that little bit of, try it one more time, because we're so close here. We have the doubters on this side.
No, I agree with him actually. The whole argument fails if one takes away the later. And so the tragic hero, as Kierkegaard presents it, is a figure that is caught in an economic trade. And it is the real sacrifice, the sacrifice as it is understood anthropologically. Something is removed from the circulation and the use of humans for a supposed higher use, and therefore it put beyond reach. And this would be the killing of the daughter, the primer of life, give her life to the god, so that. And for this economy to happen, to circulate, some space in between is required. Otherwise, no mediation, no translation of one value into the other is possible. Kierkegaard says that this is not the case for Abraham and Isaac in this God after, because there is nothing to be gained, but proving something.
But is that not a gain, that's what my principle is.
It is if you look at it from a critical point of view. What I find interesting in it is that at least it is a flat economy, where the gain and the deed are one thing. You do not get anything else out of it.
Well, to put it slightly differently, it's a one-dimensional.
Yes.
Or it's unreal.
Yes.
But the fact that it's unreal doesn't mean that it doesn't work.
It works.
It totally works.
Especially if we think of it as translated into the artistic process, because it is precisely one. It's not thinking or thinking with one's hands or whatever, but the dimensions and the rules of the dimensions one is working with become demanding for us. One should probably move out of the graphic hierarchy of things being one on top of the other, but it becomes obvious that that's what needs to be done. There is no other. The space required for a distance, for a choice, the distance is no longer there when one really knows that this is a good piece in art, and I should be good this or that. And very often it's a very unsettling process to get there, because one needs to let go of a lot of certainties.
Okay, now, back to which one? I'm not sure.
I exceeded my 2 minutes.
Back to effectively we're talking about a leap of faith. That's in faith. And in the mechanistic Agamemnon idea, you're not talking about a leap of faith. You're talking about if I do this, this will happen, and it's mechanistic, and there'll be an output.
But also there's a distance.
Yeah.
And this is the key here. The difference between the Abraham move, stroke art, which I realize is a cheat, in the sense that when it removes God from the equation, puts art into the equation, so there's a cheat there. But to the degree to which there is no distance when you're in the artistic moment, the thing that is the guiding thread is the shutter of thought. It's not thought. But you have to have something resembling thought on some level in art, or it doesn't make any sense. We had a group tutorial.
In the story, that there is no difference between actually God and Abraham, like the voice, because Abraham is the only one who hears God, and God only hears Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Yeah.
like, because there's no one else.
Right.
You know, the two of them, they are like couple. You know, they can be, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You want to take a break, or you want to continue? Shall we take a 5-minute break? Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. We're getting warmer, but not there yet. Did everybody sign this? Just to make sure I know that you're on. Does anybody have a rail card they want me to Okay, we're more or less back. Now it's time to open the book. Okay, even though this is the wrong translation, I still would like to start with the comment at the very beginning. Simon, do you want to read that very early comment? If you can read it in the German.
The Bible.
That's from Haman. It's at the very beginning. Keep going. More beginning than that.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What Tarquin the Proud said in his garden with the poppy blooms was understood by the sun, but not by the messenger.
Now, does anybody have any idea what is that and what they're doing at the beginning of your Trembling? Go on, read it again.
What Tarquin the Proud said in his garden with the poppy blooms was understood by the sun, but not by the messenger.
S-O-N. Or in the translation you have. Nick, do you want to read the translation?
I'm afraid I don't start at the beginning.
Oh.
There's three problems.
All right. Does anybody want to? You have it right there.
Yeah, but it's
No, you have it right there. No.
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, right, sorry.
Don't read the German. You can skip the German.
Oh, well, it's only in German.
No.
Oh, right. Oh, God, sorry. I'm well beyond my 2.5 seconds. What Tarquinius Superbus spoke in his garden with the poppies was understood by his son, but not by the messenger.
Can you read it again, Simon?
What Tarquin the Proud said in his garden with the poppy blooms was understood by the son, but not by the messenger.
Anyone want to make a guess at what this is? I do think it's funny that one is Tarquinius the Proud versus Tarquinius the Superbus. No, it's just so annoying. I mean, if they're going to stick with the Latin, they'll stick with the Latin. But anyway.
Great.
Yeah. Anyone know what that? Who is Tarquinius the Great?
King?
He was a king.
One of the first 7 kings of Rome.
What's that?
One of the first 7 kings of Rome.
Okay, we're just going to have to excuse you. Yes. That's correct. And so why is this important? With the king had a discussion with his son in a garden that had poppies. Somehow that's important. What? Yeah. No. It was understood, what Tarquinius said was understood by the son, but not by the messenger. Did anybody know the fuller story? Okay, give it to you. Do you know?
No, I don't know, but if you're referring to the minister,
The what?
the minister,
No. So we've got this little quote. Okay. When reading books, particularly philosophy books, and they start with little epigraphs, usually that's because it means the entire book. So if you, or they're trying to situate the whole argument. So the whole argument of fear and trembling is in that sentence. Yeah. Try not to focus on the opium, people. Okay.
This is, I have actually, I've read this.
Okay.
I don't know, but he sent his son into another group of people to kill them. So he needed a secret way of ordering his son to do that, obviously, otherwise it needed to be secret because otherwise everyone would know and kill the son first, obviously.
Right. And it wouldn't have been able to happen.
No.
And so...
To say something with poppy blooms is an odd way of saying something. So presumably he was communicating something in secret.
Do you remember the rest of it? Does anybody want to take a guess as to what? So basically, we've got the principle. The principle of what this is to say that Tarquinius is saying something to his son, and there's more than one person in the room who's hearing this, but he has to say it in such a way that the son gets it, but nobody else gets what's being said, and no one is the wiser that anything is being said. Okay, so that's correct. That's the first thing.
It's a code.
So this whole thing that you're reading is a code. The whole thing is a code. And if you are the son to whom this code is directed, you will get it. So if you are just the messenger, if you're just conveying information, you're not really the artist, as it were. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get what the code is. The code is very specific. So the sentence, what Tarquinius the Proud, or Petrobus, the Great, spoke in the garden with poppies. Now, the garden wasn't with the poppies. He had poppies in the garden that he did something to. And no, it wasn't smoking them.
He chopped the heads off.
He chopped the heads off the poppies.
Yeah. Might have been in the introduction to this. I've read this. It's all coming back now. I don't know, but yeah, he chopped the heads off.
Okay, so the messenger did not understand what this was, but the son did. And then the son went and did what he was told. Now, so that is what is situated the argument. So the argument is saying that there's a code here. If you are the intended receiver of this code, you will get it. If you are not the intended receiver of this code, you will not get it. And he puts this at the beginning of the fear and trembling. Sorry. No, perfect time. I know.
Okay. It's a bit of a disclaimer though, isn't it? Well, in a sense.
What do you get, spoiler
Well, you're sort of
alert?
saying this is brilliant, and if you get it, then it's brilliant, but if you don't, oh, well, you're not meant to.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that to there. But then that's a little bit of that to all philosophy stuff. You know, you read some of these guys and they say, you know, people before tried to solve this. When we get to Heidegger, you'll see. He basically says, you know, everyone tried to solve this problem of metaphysics, and I too am solving it, and I'm brilliant. And I realize it cannot be, I can't solve it, and therefore it cannot be solved.
In fact, the Kierkegaard himself was he on about the same thing when he's on about the outcome. He's just going, oh, but it's not the right time. In the future, you will understand what I'm going on about.
Yeah.
That's the same kind of thing, isn't it?
Fantastic. Always use that if you have to.
Yeah.
It's worked for them, it can work for you. Okay. All right. So now let's go to the actual, I think we're going to, may I steal your book, Simon?
Well, you can borrow it for the duration of this
So picky. Okay.
Crucial difference.
Sorry, just before we move on, is he trying, the father or the messenger,
No, the father is not the messenger.
So
There's three protagonists.
okay, does the father get it? Is it just
The father is giving the message.
Does he understand the message he's giving?
Ooh. That's
Jamal just told me the Muslim version of the Abraham myth, which brings these aspects.
okay. What can you say? What that is?
The way I heard the story, it's like, I mean, if he thinks he's a prophet and he's in communication with God, so he was like having this dream. He had this dream, and he thought that my dream is like a true dream kind of. So he had this dream and he was confused. Am I supposed to do that? And then he ignored it. Then he had this dream again, and then he spoke to his son. And I mean, his son was not little, but he was not big enough. So he was like he was trained in the same faith. So he was like kind of agreeing terms, kind of. But then he was still not sure. Then when he had the dream third time, so he planned it. I mean, the way I heard the story is he planned it, and then he took the sheep. No, sorry, he didn't took the sheep, but he took the
lamb.
Tools.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He knew where to go, which place to go, and then when he was acting it, the word that we like in childhood read, it says God is saying, "Oh Abraham, you've done the dream come true." It's like he was too surrendering himself in front of God, that God Himself is saying, "I didn't mean to say that kind of word." So I mean, in that sense, this question doesn't come to my mind when I read that story in that way. The Kierkegaard one, but I don't know.
No. So when you read Kierkegaard's version, did you think that Kierkegaard was saying that? Was also agreeing with that version, that in fact Abraham did not understand the thing that was being said to him?
No, because it was a dream. So I mean, and the child was not killed.
No.
Yeah.
In none of the versions is the child killed. But what Kierkegaard, yes, okay, and that's kind of what you were saying too, Chloe, right? I mean, in the sense that does the person who's supposed to be, let's say in the example of the message with the king Tarquinius is God, the son is Abraham, and God is saying to Abraham, go chop off the head of your son, and nobody else can hear it because it's not meant to be anybody else. And then the son, that is, say, Abraham, goes off to do this deed. Then we enter with Muslim translation, and you're saying that what that is suggesting is that, in fact, Abraham heard God through a dream twice, and on the third time decided to enact it, and God was like, don't be so literal. You've misunderstood what I was saying, and so here's a lamb, idiot. Like go forward, which is a fair enough translation.
So when I apply that to practice, like if I'm doing my own artwork, I'll probably be more worried about that. I can go into my moment. But if I come to this class and you say to me that your artwork will be marked, so now I have to be conscious for when I'm in my moment.
Right.
And then you say that if you mention, for instance, I prefer your line drawings to your other work. So that's like a message. So I will be even more conscious for my exams. So it's like a training period kind of.
Yes. So that's even a better way of coming at the same issue, but slightly. Okay, so I think that the takeaway from this, or one of the things to think about, is something gets lost in the translation of one's work. Now, whether or not that loss is the death of, it's got to be something that's precious. Otherwise, the loss kind of doesn't count in the work. What's being argued is something very specific about if you have a son or a daughter, I mean, obviously they're talking about son-in-law, if you have a child and you are asked to kill that child for whatever reasons, and for some reason it somehow makes sense in some scheme of things, you know that the pain of it, let's say in the Agamemnon sense, that the pain of it is going to be incomprehensible. as a parent. Or let's say, forget about killing your child, let's say the child dies. It's going to be an incomprehensible issue, and it's going to be very painful. The loss is going to be very painful. So what Kierkegaard is saying here is that in order for one to be in relationship to what they know they need to do in order to make something happen that is based on not a rational position, but not an irrational position. So between rational and irrational, there's another form of logic. And he's calling that form of logic, in this case, faith. And we could call this form of logic, we don't have to go to faith to call it faith. One could call it just as you're saying. You have an artwork, a tutor comes in and says, well, you know, it's very interesting, but it's not working, you got to really do this, and this, and you sort of imbibe those remarks, you inhabit those remarks, and you match yourself to those remarks and see whether or not, yeah, I agree, no, I don't agree, yeah, I agree, no, I don't agree, until it finally gets into that position. But to do that means you have to now let go of something else that you thought was precious. If you don't think it's precious, if you think, oh, well, I could have used that, I don't need it, it's ridiculous, then it's not worth it anyway. It's kind of like, if you could have just gone, well, you know, listen, I have it here, but I could have easily had it there, then that's not the same kind of thing. That's not the same request. The request to say, well, put the piece here as opposed to putting it here, and you say, well, you know, I could have put it there, I could have put it there, I could have put it there, I could have put it, I don't really care where I put it. Then the whole thing is not worthy of the discussion, is what's being said. So in order for you to understand how that decision is made, how that judgment is made on the placement of things, you have to understand the relationship of love and ethics and loss to it. And if you don't have that relationship of love, ethics, and loss to this problem, it's not going to work, no matter how you put it. It's just going to be crap, basically. There's more specific than that, but, you know, it's just not. It's going to be, quote, bad art. And that's how you begin to play around with those kind of things. You need to figure out. So what he calls this, he builds the argument, as Matteo was saying, he builds the argument in terms of this rhythm of telling the story. First he tells it from the point of view of Abraham, then he tells it from the point of view of Sarah listening to it or not listening to it, or should he tell Sarah or not tell. He goes through all these different ethical conundrums. And it's the same kind of thing. You know, your tutor comes, well, it's a similar kind of thing. Your tutor comes in and says, do it here, do it here. And now, these are all interesting suggestions, let's say, but why should you listen to any of them? Why shouldn't you just listen to the one that is giving you the position to start with? And that's what he's trying to develop. He's trying to develop how the way in which what you ought to do, and the ought question, as I mentioned before, is an ethical question. You ought to change it and go this way. No matter how you frame it, ought remains a potential, remains something that is in the realm of an ethical move. You're being asked to suspend the ethical. Not get rid of it, just suspend it. So that if we push what Mattia was bringing up earlier, that the economy that's in front of you is a flattened economy, is a singular economy, is an economy without a dimension, then the ethics is not lost, it's just not part of that flatness. So the ethics is relatively autonomous to the move. So, for example, one of the students here, who may not name them, sent me a thing of a group called Brain Bomb, or something like that. And I think it's called Brain Bomb. Anyway, and this was the voiceover on the thing, and I had a picture of a car sort of going through a city, and it was all, you know, very, you know, dark and slow and whatever. But the music that was overplaying. It was all about, you know, taking this woman and having, you know, sex with her, anal sex against her will, and just treating her like a piece of filth, and, you know, and like, it just went on. It was just like, you know, really, you know, these people are trying to create a radical thing. This is my reaction to it. It's like, you know, it's terrible. Now, one could have said that they were suspending the ethical there. And my view, you can take a look at brain bombs. My view was that they hadn't suspended it at all. In fact, what happened was they were still in the ethical moment that they couldn't get rid of. So their work became much more narrow. I'll show. If you guys look at it online, go look at brain bombs online. You'll look it up on YouTube. You'll find them. See what you think. The difference is it's asking you, can you do work that suspends an ethical move, but doesn't get rid of it? It becomes part of the shutter. So it's not that Abraham, for example, was getting rid of this. It was not that he decided that he was going to now just become this psychotic, a dream or otherwise. It's that it was this move that the ethical rode alongside, but was not on it.
So you're doing it in spite of the ethical?
No, you're not doing it. You're doing it, I wouldn't even say in relation. The ethical has nothing to do with it, except for the fact that no, it's not quite that it has nothing to do with it. That's too strong.
His value is not high.
No, the ethical has to do with the fact that you have subordinated yourself to it. That's the ethical. The ethical has the gut that makes you go, yeah, I'm going to move that direction. I'm going to pull these things together that haven't been pulled together before.
You're supporting making yourself to be ethical.
Yeah. No, you're supporting yourself.
To this inner calling thing.
Yeah. And that is...
It's just entirely irrelevant to the ethical.
No, that is an ethical move. It's just not necessarily a moral move.
Is that more like about being true to yourself?
Yeah, it's just that you don't have a self that you're true to.
Yeah, but...
So you don't have this inner eye that you're saying that you're true to.
But
So, yeah.
The ethical is a public,
Good.
universal thing, isn't it?
It's
But this
public.
seems like a very private, personal thing.
But you can't really...
It's in relation to it in the sense that I wanted to say it's in relation to it in the sense that you're not doing it.
No, but you are doing it.
How are you doing the ethical in that situation?
Oh, I see. Sorry. I misunderstood the you and what being
Because
done.
may have something to do
Okay.
with why I expressed it.
No. Okay, let's just turn to... Yes.
Problem 1 does 3 description of this.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly where we're going to turn. Page 83.
Mine is 52.
You're in problem out of 1?
Yeah.
That's 62?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different edition. Okay. Yeah, go on. Did you...
So on the third paragraph,
Which no one has, but anyway. What do you mean for faith?
yes, for faith is just this paradox,
Yeah.
that the single individual is higher than the universal, though in such a way, be it noted, that the movement is repeated, that is, that having been in the universal, the single individual now sets himself apart as the particular above the universal.
Yeah.
And then in the following page...
Wait. That's a big thing to take in. Let's take some time on this. So this is problem out of 1. Is there a teleological suspension of the ethical? This is where we're at. Is there a teleological suspension of the ethical? So if you can find that, the variations of the translations, the one that's on Dropbox is the worst of all the ones I've seen. I do apologize again. Jess, what was the pages that you said corresponded with that? It was page
39.
Yes,
39. So that we're more or less kind of on the same page here.
38.
And the three.
Yeah, 38. Problem, is there such a thing as a teleological suspension of the ethical? So, Samantha, can you read the first paragraph? If you see it enough for you to be able to read it.
yeah.
Okay, you gotta read it really loud so the room over there can hear you.
The ethical as such is universal, and as the universal it applies to everyone, which can be put from another point of view by saying that it applies at every moment. It rests imminently in itself, has nothing outside itself that is its telos and purpose, but is itself a telos for everything outside.
Okay, now what are you saying there?
That why was Wittgenstein from like I remember one thing that because he knew that there was the economy thing that he was getting something from it that justified the action. But then with the what's the question? Abraham. With Abraham, he doesn't have the telos to feed back. He doesn't have an end that then feeds back into.
Okay, that's true, but that's not what that says. Okay, so what does that say? That's true, that is one interpretation. So read it again, this time read it as though you're going to get an academy for it. You know, like you mean it, you know, like you really mean these words.
I don't know what these words mean, but I don't know.
Bart, you want to read it? Yeah, so this time read it, you know, with like some fervor.
The ethical as such is the universal, and as the universal it applies to everyone, which can be put from another point of view by saying that it applies at every moment.
Okay, say it again, this time with real meaning.
Yeah, right, okay.
It's like you're going to trust the academy on this.
Okay, the ethical as such is the universal, and...
Try and read it so that you stay awake in the reading of it.
More importantly, we do.
Okay, no pressure.
The ethical as such is the universal, and as the universal it applies to everyone.
Okay, so you're explaining this to, you know, a variety of people on this side, the doubters. Okay, and you're going to try and convince them. Try it again. So far, they're completely unconvinced.
I'm unconvinced.
Nick, you want to give it a go?
No?
And just this way. Okay, now listen to, you know, the fact that he's trying to convince you, doubters on this end. Okay.
The ethical, as such, is the universal.
Yes!
Yay!
Good!
Okay, what do you mean? The ethical, as such, is the universal, and as the universal, it applies to everyone, which can be put from another point of view by saying that it applies at every moment.
Yay! Very, very good.
There's a lot of bullshit around.
What does it mean?
Oh, God. I was concentrating on... It's sort of... The ethical is there all the time for everyone.
Good.
It's in the moment.
Right.
Though we're just about to step around
It's in the moment, and it is the moment.
for everyone.
Yeah. So every moment of the moment is ethical. You're perfect. No, read the sentence again, just so people have heard it.
The ethical, as such, is the universal, and as the universal, it applies to everyone, which can be put from another point of view by saying that it applies at every moment.
Okay, got it? Everybody on the same page? We've got past sentence one. Okay, good. Okay, go on.
It rests imminently in itself.
Okay, what does it mean to rest imminently in itself?
Imminently means there's more things.
Nothing outside itself.
Okay, and what's imminent? What does the word imminent mean?
Right now.
Okay, it also means something else.
It's going to happen.
Very good. So not only is it right now, but it's going to happen, and there's a word in philosophy for that. This is a B, ends in G.
Being.
Now, but that was big deal.
Becoming.
Becoming. Becoming. Ooh, see, okay, ooh, okay. Good.
It rests immanently in itself. There's nothing outside
So it rests in its becoming
in itself.
in itself.
Has nothing outside itself.
Nothing outside itself.
That is its telos, end or purpose, but is itself. The telos for everything outside.
Okay, stop.
Oh,
Did it make sense? Did it make sense? It's almost there. Yes, yes. Ah. Yes. Want to say it again?
It's the ground.
Okay, it's the ground, it's also the purpose. It's the ground, the purpose, and the process of getting there. That's the telos. The ethical. Becomes the ground, the purpose, and the goal. The ground, the purpose, and the process. The ethical. You can see why you must have to suspend it if you're going to get any work done. Can you read the first sentence again? And maybe could you read the title to the first sentence?
Is there a teleological suspension of the ethical?
That's the first problem.
The ethical as such is the universal, and as the universal it applies to everyone, which can be put from another point of view by saying that it applies at every moment.
So we got that part, right? Everybody's clear on that part.
It rests immanently in itself, has nothing outside itself, and is its telos, but is itself the telos for everything outside. And when that is taken up into it, it has no further to go.
Okay, so when it's finally become the oak tree, ta-da, that's it.
That's not it.
It has no further to go on further to go. Okay, yeah.
Seen as an immediate, no more than sensate and psychic being. The single individual is the particular that has its telos in the universal, and the universal's ethical task is always to express himself in this, to abrogate his particularity so as to become the universal. As soon as the single individual wants to assert himself in his particularity, in direct opposition to the universal, he sins, and only by recognizing this can he again reconcile himself with the universal. Whenever, having entered the universal, the single individual feels an urge to assert his particularity, he is in a state of temptation, from which he can extricate himself only by surrendering his particularity to the universal in repentance. If that is the highest that can be said of man and his existence, then the ethical and the person's eternal blessedness, which is taken in his telos in all eternity and at every moment, are identical. For in that case, it would be a contradiction to say that one surrendered that telos, i.e. suspended it teleologically, since by suspending the telos, one would be forfeiting it. While forfeiting it, thank you. I knew there was something like that. Forfeiting it, while what is said to be suspended in this sense is not forfeited, but preserved in something higher, the latter being precisely its telos.
Okay, Simon. Okay, sure. Okay, now let's just back up for a second. We're so close. Instead of the word sin, or any of these, faith words, let's use some other word. What would be another word? Let's use black sheep. No, let's use rebelling. Mm-hmm. Let's use what? Error. Mm-hmm. Error? Okay, want to use error? No, what are you rebelling?
Ironically, I want to use rebelling. Use something else.
Okay, so can you read it again from the top? This time.
All of it.
Yeah, this time, when you get to sin, and also, what was the other religious words over there?
We're going to insert other words.
Yeah, repent, that's a religious word. So instead of repent, let's use that as rebellion. And what was the word you wanted even?
Error.
Error. So for sin, you read error, and for repentance, read rebellion.
Sin is error, repentance is rebellion. This is going to go wrong.
The whole paragraph. Yeah?
Well, it's not really that long.
No. The ethical as such is the
What's the
universe.
title?
The title is the teleological suspension of the ethical.
Okay, can you ask that like a real question? Like you mean it? Or Nick is gonna have to go back, we have to give it back to Nick.
Is there a teleological suspension of the ethical?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is there? Let's find
I'm
out.
about to tell you. The ethical as such is the universal, and as the universal it applies to everyone, which can be put from another point of view by saying that it applies at every moment. It rests immanently in itself, has nothing outside itself that is its telos, end or purpose, but is itself the telos for everything outside.
So we got that, right? That makes perfect sense?
Mm-hmm.
The light seems to be on fire. Yeah, okay. The light is no longer on fire. I have a terrible feeling that an animal died just now. I'm sorry. Yeah. Anyway, sorry about that. Okay, so did that make perfect sense, the thing about the telos? Did it make sense? Okay, maybe not perfect sense. Did it make imperfect sense? Did it make some kind of sense?
Well, it's kind of paradoxical, isn't it? But it's just coming...
It's literally saying what the telos is.
It's all encompassing.
So the telos is the goal, the process that comes back around and forms the ground. Okay? It forms the start. So if the ethical is the sort of perfect example. I mean, we've been using oak trees, but now we're going to use philosophy terms. Instead of oak tree, we're going to use the word ethical. So we're going to say the ethical starts your journey, but it's also where you're headed, and it also comes back around and gives you sort of your purpose.
And expressed through you all the time.
Yeah, but it's not just expressed through you. It is also the path that you're on. It's also where you're going.
Yeah, but the universal sort of, appears through your actions as an individual anyway. You
Yeah.
really inhabit universal, but, the only way for universal to appear is through your actions.
That's
or somebody
right.
else's actions.
Yes. But picture your MA as the ethical universal moment that you're heading toward. To become getting your MA. And so that you're going toward that MA, it's coming back around, giving you purpose to go forward.
To be.
So on the one hand, the MA is sort of not who you are, but you are also in the moment of the MA. Yes, okay, makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so the same thing with the ethics. So instead of ethics, can you read MA? Okay, try that. So the title.
An MA suspension.
Is there a teleological suspension of the ethical?
Of the MA. Okay, go on. It will make sense, believe me. Go
I'll
on.
just carry on now.
Yeah, just try to remember with ethical you want MA.
Yeah. The MA as such is the universal, and as the universal it applies to everyone, which can be put from another point of view by saying that it applies at every moment. It rests immanently in itself, has nothing outside itself that is its telos, but is itself the telos for everything outside. And when that is taken up into it, it has no further to go.
Yeah, makes sense? Yeah. Okay.
Seen as an immediate, no more than sensate and psychic being, the single individual is the particular that has its telos in the universal.
The universal gate. So the individual is the student, is part of the MA, that has their individual way of appropriating it, but they're still appropriating it in relation to the full program of the MA. So when you have an MA, when you're a master student, and you have this thing called a master's, that's what you are no matter what the master's is in. You are at the level of a master. Your hard task.
I can't remember where we got. I've done the sensate bit. Sensate being and the individual's MA task is always to express himself in this, to abrogate his particularity so as to become the universal. As soon as the single individual wants to insert himself in this particularity, in direct opposition to the universal, the rebels.
He errs, good, he errs, well done, see? You're correct, yes?
And only by recognising this can he again reconcile himself with the universal. Whenever, having entered the universal, the single individual feels an urge to assert his particularity, he is in a state of rebellion.
Ooh, it didn't work.
I feel like
No,
I'm
it did
some
work.
Radio 4 quiz show. From which he can extricate himself only by surrendering his particularity to the universal in rebellion. No, yes, no, rebellion.
Rebellion.
It is, yeah, repentance is, I got it wrong, I said it when it was temptation earlier, so it kind of worked. If that is the highest that can be said of a man in his existence,
And MA, yeah.
then the MA and a person's eternal blessedness, which is his telos, in all eternity and at every moment, are identical. For in that case, it would be a contradiction to say that one surrendered that telos, i.e. suspended it teleologically, since by suspending the telos, one would be forfeiting it. While what is said to be...
So by suspending the telos of your MA, you'd be forfeiting your MA. You see that?
Because it's the whole thing.
It's the whole thing.
You can't suspend it because then there's nothing because it's residue.
Absolutely. Right. But somehow he's suggesting that's exactly what you have to do in order to actually do art. We're getting somewhere tonight, cooking with gas. Okay, go on.
Well, what is said to be suspended in this case is not forfeited, but preserved in something higher, the latter being precisely its telos.
Okay, knife in the head. It's a very New York expression, by the way. Go on.
If that is the case, then Hegel is right in his Good and Conscience, where he discusses man seen merely as the single individual, and regards this way of seeing him as a moral form of evil, to be annulled in the teleology of the ethical of the MA life. So that the individual who stays at this stage is either in error or in a state of rebellion. Is it temptation or repentance? Repentance.
We didn't come up with a word for temptation. What do you want? What do you want for temptation? Pleasure?
Because this is too easy at the moment. Distraction.
Desire. You want desire. We want desire for temptation.
Okay. I nearly wrote it down at the start. I think it got more complicated now. Where Hegel goes wrong, on the other hand, is in talking about faith. That needs to be changed. In not protesting loudly and clearly against the honour and glory enjoyed by Abraham as the father of faith, when he should really be remitted to some lower court for trial and exposed as a murderer. For faith is just this paradox, that the single individual is higher than the universal, though in such a way, be it noted, that the movement is repeated. That is, that, having been in the universal, the single individual now sets himself apart as the particular above the universal.
Okay, so we're going to stop right there because I need you to do one more change. The word, rather than faith, can you read it with the word art?
Now you will try.
Now, just go back, and now, and because I want you to, how we're doing, okay. I want you to be doing, okay, so just, everybody else, we're going to have to cheer you on everybody else, like, try and follow, so we got the MA that we replaced. What was MA standing in for? Okay, because I like to forget what the actual P is here.
Perish the thought.
Okay. Okay, so try again with like a couple sentences back.
For art, it's just this paradox.
Okay.
For art is just this paradox, that the single individual is higher than the universal, though in such a way, be it noted, that the movement is repeated. That is that, having been in the universal, the single individual now sets himself apart as the particular above the universal. If that is not art, then Abraham is done for, and art has never existed in the world, just because it has always existed. For if the MA life is the highest, and nothing incommensurable is left over in man, except in the sense of what is evil, i.e. the single individual who is to be expressed in the universal, then one needs no other categories than those of the Greek philosophers, or whatever can be logically deduced from them. This is something Hegel, who has after all made some study of the Greeks, ought not to have kept quiet about. One not infrequently hears people who prefer to lose themselves in cliches rather than studies say that light shines over the Christian world. The art world?
Yeah, sadly. We're going to make that sound like...
Well, paganism is shrouded in darkness.
Yeah, good. Now you're learning how to read philosophy. That's well done. Yeah.
This kind of talk has always struck me as strange, since any reasonably deep thinker, any reasonably serious artist, will still seek rejuvenation in the eternal youth of the Greeks. The explanation that may be that they know not what to say, only that they have to say something. There is nothing wrong with saying that paganism did not have art. But if this is to mean anything, one must be a little clearer. One must be a little clearer what one means by art. Otherwise, one falls back into those cliches. It is easy to explain the whole of existence, art included, and he is not the worst reckoner in life who counts on being admired for having such an explanation. For it is, as Boileau says, I'm just going to read the English, a fool can always find a greater fool who admires him. Art is just this paradox, that the single individual as the particular is higher than the universal, is justified before the latter, not as subordinate but superior, though in such a way, be it noted, that it is the single individual who, having been subordinate to the universal as the particular, now by means of the universal, becomes that individual who, as the particular, stands in an absolute relation to the absolute.
Okay, so do we have knife in the head, or do we have, like, understanding here?
So the last two words, an absolute with relation to absolute. Yes.
Yeah,
So close, so close.
That was one thing
Brilliantly
that really baffled me when I read it.
And that's without having the exchange of the artwork.
Yeah. Well, I haven't really got a problem with the religious stuff. I mean, it's helpful to put it in the art
I think
context
it's
as
helpful
well.
to put it in the art context just because you can then hear it more. Because attunement is what we're trying to get at.
Yeah.
We're trying to hear what's going on here.
But, I mean, yeah.
So the
That's
question is...
brilliantly written, but what it means.
Does anybody want to take a running leap at what this means?
Well, I mean, you know, Jesus, now how to explain? Even if you have an idea, like, you know, see, art is universal as far as I follow, and I am, and as an individual, I am an artist. But that, you know, that is not to say that, you know, I need to follow some established art rules. Then I have like my own free expression.
But if you totally followed the art rules, you would never
But
do
then
art.
that wouldn't be art. You
That's
know?
right. So somehow you've got to get above the universal or below it or beside it or
Still
somewhere
be in
where
connection with it.
in order to in fact re-establish the universal.
Yeah.
So,
You're taking up,
now go on.
you're somehow taking a higher position, but that needs to be brought back down to earth, essentially.
So you're taking a higher position so that something else happens.
You're reinventing the ground.
Which is also called
the universal, the ethical route.
Very good. Can you repeat that?
You're taking a new, higher position in order to reinvent the ethical ground universal.
That's right. Good. Practice. What were you going to say, Chloe?
Similar, but I was going to start with surrendering yourself. I'm quite going to rob you completely. So you have to surrender yourself first, and the universal will give you that back so that you can take that ground.
Yes. Yes. Can you say it again? The next step actually talking about it too, but
by surrendering yourself to the universal, then it will feed you back something so that you can go to a higher ground and reinvent the universal, which is building what is it? Robbie.
Yeah, is that... You're a part... The universe can't help but... The universal can't help but be reinvented because you're inextricably linked. So once you've done, it's going to happen anyway. Is that fair to say?
it's fair to say, but it's not quite right because otherwise everyone would be able to invent the universal, and that would make the universal particular. But somehow the universal has to become universal, i.e., applicable to everyone. So that's the next problem. We're not quite solved the problem yet.
So there has to be an individual making that move.
And yet, at the same time, the community must move with it. Otherwise,
You have to be accepted in that move.
well, it's not rational. It's the shudder that's accepted, not the necessary to move itself. Here, what are you going to say?
Well, the song in Birds of Abraham, where the character keeps saying, I don't want to read about it, I would like to be there so she would see the full. It's something that cannot be translated by language.
Yes, so that's the next problem. The next problem is that what's that?
Can it be shared?
It cannot be shared through language, but that really can't be shared.
It's something that the messenger cannot understand.
Something the messenger can understand.
And they communicate nevertheless.
Right.
The communication is probably not the right word.
So, may I ask you, Simon, one last time to start at the beginning of the thing, and with our various things so that people can hear us. You still have 10 minutes. You can't hear it. You haven't really finished training. Okay, ready?
Is
Everybody
there
ready? Take your notes.
Is there a teleological suspension of the ethical?
No.
I'm looking at that, I'm ignoring the question. Is there a teleological suspension of the MA? The MA as such is the universal, and as the universal it applies to everyone, which can be put from another point of view by saying that it applies at every moment. It rests immanently in itself, has nothing outside itself that is its telos, but is itself the telos for everything outside. And when that is taken up into it, it has no further to go. Seen as an immediate, no more than sensate and psychic being, the single individual is the particular that has its telos in the universal. And the individual's MA task is always to express himself in this, to abrogate his particularity so as to become the universal. As soon as the single individual wants to assert himself in his particularity, in direct opposition to the universal, he errs, and only by recognizing this can he again reconcile himself with the universal. Whenever, having entered the universal, the single individual feels an urge to assert his particularity, he is in a state of temptation, from which he can extricate himself only by surrendering his particularity to the universal.
The temptation was desire, but anyway.
Yeah, I forgot that one. To the universal in rebellion. If that is the highest that can be said of man and his existence, then the MA and a person's eternal blessedness, which is his telos in all eternity and every moment, are identical. For in that case, it would be a contradiction to say that one surrendered that telos, i.e. suspended it teleologically, since by suspending the telos one would be forfeiting it. while what is said to be suspended in this sense is not forfeited but preserved in something higher, the latter being precisely its feeling. If that is the case, then Hegel is right in his Good and Conscience, where he discusses man seen merely as the single individual and regards this way of seeing him as a moral form of evil, to be annulled in the teleology of the MA life, so that the individual who stays at this stage is either in error or in a state of rebellion. Where Hegel goes wrong, on the other hand, is in talking about art. In not protesting loudly and clearly against the honour and glory enjoyed by Abraham as the father of art, when he should really be remitted to some lower court for trial and exposed as a murderer. For art is just this paradox, that the single individual is higher than the universal, though in such a way be it noted that the movement is repeated, that is, that having been in the universal, the single individual now sets himself apart as the particular above the universal. If that is not art, then Abraham is done for, and art has never existed in the world, just because it has always existed. For if the MA life is the highest, nothing incommensurable is left over in man, except in the sense of what is evil, i.e., the single individual who is to be expressed in the universal, then one needs no other categories than those of the Greek philosophers, or whatever can be logically deduced from them. This is something Hegel, who has after all made some study of the Greeks, ought not to have kept quiet about. One not infrequently hears people who prefer to lose themselves in cliches rather than studies say that light shines over the Christian world, the art world, while paganism is shrouded in darkness. This kind of talk has always struck me as strange, since any reasonably deep thinker, any reasonably serious artist will still seek rejuvenation in the eternal youth of the Greeks. The explanation may be that they know not what to say, only that they have to say something. There is nothing wrong with saying that paganism did not have faith, but if this is to mean anything, one must be a little clearer what one means by faith. Otherwise, one falls back into those cliches. By art, sorry. It is easy to explain the whole of existence, art included, and he is not the worst reckoner in life who counts on being admired for having such an explanation. For it is Boileau who says, a fool can always find a greater fool who admires him. Art is just this paradox, that the single individual as the particular is higher.
The most important point, so slowly.
Art is just this paradox, that the single individual as the particular is higher than the universal, is justified before the latter, not as subordinate but superior, though in such a way, be it noted, that it is the single individual who, having been subordinate to the universal as the particular, now by means of the universal, becomes that individual who, as the particular, stands in an absolute relation to the absolute. This position cannot be mediated, for all mediation occurs precisely by virtue of the universal. It is and remains in all eternity a paradox, inaccessible to thought. And yet art is this paradox. Or else, these are implications which I would ask the reader always to bear in mind, that it would be too complicated for me to spell them out each time. Or else faith has never existed, or else art has never existed, just because it has always existed, and Abraham is done for.
I think we draw the line there now. How many people are going to try and read that little bit? I suggest you read it tonight, write it on your mirror, read it, and see if you can get what it means to not have the distance between your being and this thing called art. So wherever you see the word faith, just cross it out for the time being and put the word art in there. And wherever you see universal, put in MA program, which is hilarious. Or art, depending on art. There was one other thing, ethical, sorry, that's what I was thinking of, ethical. Try it. You'll see, you'll begin to see what the logic is that's being developed here. Because it's too raw or too lumpy to start talking about, well, what about murdering the son or not murdering the son, because then we get caught up in the ethical, rightly so, but in the ethical issues, but that's not what's actually being argued here. We just have to get a sense of what the actual position is that's being put forward. And always remember, what does the word, or always ask yourself, what does the word tremble have to do with this, and why should you be afraid? What's the fear? Where's the fear located? What's the fear about in your work? Okay. So we see you next week. Same time, same station. I'm going to start seeing everybody in their tutorials, hopefully starting on this Thursday. If they haven't heard from me yet, it'll be next Thursday. Everyone, try to see you on Tuesday or Thursday.
In here, that bit is start from 83, through to 85.
If anybody who's taping this or recording it, can you give it to, upload a copy of it to Dropbox or something like that? Let's try. Or send it to Dave, that's the main thing. Dave,